Christmas came early in 2017, about a month early for Melissa Seidenstricker, a 29-year-old property manager of a luxury apartment building in downtown St. Paul. On Thanksgiving Day, her brother Jake gifted her a cold weather suit. He knew she was yearning for an early ice fishing trip, and she made a break for Upper Red Lake late Friday with a friend. Melissa was a party goer, and she delighted in meeting up that night with fellow members of the Hard Water Zombies at the bar at Rogers on Red. 48 hours later, when the weekend's gold rush for fishing was over, Melissa and her friend were reported missing by the county sheriff's department. A desperate search followed, only to discover they had tragically drowned. It wasn't until a full investigation was completed that her family, her friends, the police, and her lawyer, Steve Gabrielson, knew exactly what had happened on that fateful Thanksgiving weekend of November 24th through 26, 2017. Here today is Jake Seidenstricker to tell the story of his beloved sister, Melissa, for the first time ever on national TV.
My name is Jake Seidenstricker, and I want America to know this about my sister. She was a young, talented, very strong-willed woman on her way up in the world. She loved the outdoors. She was getting more to her roots of where she wanted to be in life. That high-paced city life wasn't where she wanted to be. And what I miss about Melissa the most is talking to each other. I miss the text messages from her. I miss her just asking for advice, I guess, about fishing or hunting, the things that I knew a lot about. To lose her, it's taken a big toll on us and our family.
In this insider exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, our news team visits with Jake Seidenstricker and the family's attorney, Steve Gabrielson, in Sartell, Minnesota, to go behind the headlines to see how Steve successfully represented Melissa's estate to get justice. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Sartell, Minnesota. It is my great pleasure to introduce Steve Gabrielson to the show. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It sure has. I was just thinking how many years it was, 5 years maybe?
5 years now. You're looking good.
Thank you, you too.
And you're even more successful. I'm glad I'm here. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your firm, why you practice the type of law that you do.
Sure. Well, I graduated from law school in 1983 at the University of Minnesota. I went into a general practice at that time. I really enjoyed it, but I worked with two older attorneys who were sort of tired of doing trial work. So I had a tremendous opportunity to have lots of early trial work. My first case, my first jury trial was a $600 defective engine repair case. I was so excited when the call came. My heart was thumping when I got the call from the court administrator's office that a verdict was in, and that's never changed. I've always been excited about that, and then you win some and you lose some. That's one of the things that I like about litigation work is you can win or you can lose. And that general practice then converted into a specialized practice about 5 years into my practice, where I moved into a personal injury law firm. And I ended up trying cases for all the attorneys in that firm for several years. Ultimately, I left that firm to start my own firm, primarily so that I could handle cases from the beginning rather than just handle cases when voluntary settlement negotiations had failed and now it was necessary to have the case in suit. So since about 1997, I have operated my own firm here in Sartell, and I have another office in Brainerd, Minnesota, where I just focus on plaintiffs' personal injury work and wrongful death work.
Good. What is the reason that you became a lawyer to begin with? What drives you?
Well, I didn't really plan to be a lawyer initially. When I was in college, I thought I was going to go into medicine. I had all the wrong reasons to want to go into medicine. I realized that, so I quit college for about a half a year, and went out to be a ski bum, and talked to my dad and my grandpa, and got some different ideas about maybe what I should consider if I wasn't going to go into medicine. When I came back, I thought, well, I'll just keep my same biology major, but I will just be a lawyer instead. So I went to law school. At that time, I had no clue about what a personal injury lawyer was. And as it turned out, that background, I taught anatomy and physiology as a lab instructor for 2 years in college. Now, that has given me such a great insight and head start in reading medical records and talking to doctors.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about, some of the legal issues that we have in this case relate to the issue of dram shop law. What is that, and what does that mean?
The dram shop is the common word for the illegal sale of alcohol by a commercial establishment. There is strict liability in Minnesota for illegally selling alcohol. Interestingly, there is no social host liability for providing alcohol.
And define social host for us.
If you come to my house and I serve you so much alcohol that you are intoxicated and you leave and get in an accident with somebody on your way home, I can't be held responsible. I would be a social host under those circumstances. But a bar, a licensed facility that can sell alcohol, would be subject to the strict liability provisions in the dram shop law.
Where they exchange money for the drinks. Social host is not doing that.
It doesn't have to be money, because something of value, yeah. They can give away the drinks at the bar. That's also illegal.
What if I'm a dram shop, if I'm a liquor establishment and I'm watching this show, what should I be aware of in the state of Minnesota when it comes to serving alcohol to some of my customers?
Most of them know this already, but it's a crime to sell alcohol to a visibly intoxicated person. It's a crime for them to give alcohol to a visibly intoxicated person in the bar.
Aren't insurance companies, I'm just kind of curious, aren't insurance companies, don't they have some sort of exception to someone who breaks the law by giving liquor to someone who's clearly intoxicated, so they're excluded from covering that?
No, the insurance companies provide insurance coverage to the bars, to the dram shops,
Yes.
for potential dram shop liability. So they provide the insurance to the bars if the bar overserves someone so that they are visibly intoxicated and go and cause problems for someone else. Interestingly, the person who's intoxicated has no claim against the bar. Only other persons would have a claim.
So Steve, today we're here talking about the case that you handled successfully, Melissa Seidenstricker. Tell our audience a little bit about the facts.
In November of 2017, Melissa and a companion had rented a sleeper fish house to be used for an ice fishing trip on Red Lake, Minnesota. Red Lake is a huge lake. There's Upper Red Lake and
Very north of here, isn't it?
yeah, north of here, northern part of the state. It's a huge lake. In any event, weather was unseasonably warm, and so Melissa and her friend borrowed Melissa's brother's portable fishing shelter and brought that up with a trailer and an ATV, thinking that they would be sleeping on shore in the sleeper fish house. This is a fish house that you actually stay in, sleep in, has beds in it.
Right.
And when they got to the resort, they found that the resort had actually put their line of sleeper fish houses about a mile out onto Red Lake. The resort had an access road that could be used to get out onto the lake to get to the fish houses. Well, they fished that day, which was a Friday, went to the bar that night at the resort, and stayed at the bar from about 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock in the morning, thereabouts. And then we're going to head back on the ATV back out to the fish houses. No one saw them again, we think. The people at Rogers Resort told the police that Melissa and her friend had been back into the resort on Saturday during the forenoon, afternoon, and the evening.
Drinking a lot.
Yeah, sure. And, well, actually on Saturday, they'd been drinking on Friday night. But they started in to get supplies on Saturday. Unfortunately, what had happened and what we learned from cell phone pinging records was that Melissa and her friend, after driving their ATV off the access road onto the lake from the resort a little after 1 o'clock, drove the ATV into a football field size area of open water on Red Lake that was just northwest of the resort. They were supposed to be heading northeast. They drowned that night. And the family found out about it when Melissa stopped contacting them through the weekend. They checked with each other. Melissa's brother Jake drove up to Red Lake and happened to be there when the police were interviewing the resort owner. He actually was the one that went out on Monday morning with law enforcement to the fish house, opened up the fish house, saw some of their belongings. Jake is a hunter. He had his binoculars with him. He looked off in a distance, saw a black spot, got permission to go over to inspect that. He found that it was actually his sister's boot. Then he saw a piece of his trailer that was floating up, board from the trailer, floating up under the ice.
Right.
That's what led to the discovery that Melissa and her friend had drowned.
This happens quite a bit in this neck of the woods, doesn't it? Someone drowning or going through the ice.
It happens.
Because the ice is too thin.
It can happen.
Now, when they brought the case to you, Jake and his family, Jake is a brother, he's going to be on the show in a bit. What were some of the legal challenges you were looking at before you decided to take the case?
Well, we quickly found out how long Melissa and her companion had been at the bar at the resort. And then we found out what likely had happened to them. In other words, that they went into the water early Saturday morning. They weren't back at the resort on Saturday. The dram shop claim, after looking at the blood alcohol results for both Melissa and her friend, was probably a pretty simple case for us because they were both clearly intoxicated from their blood alcohol tests, and people that worked at the resort had described Melissa to the police as being intoxicated. Mm-hmm. Her heirs could make a claim. Other interested persons could make a claim on her behalf regardless of whether she had any fault. Her fault could not be attributed to them because they had done nothing wrong. That was probably the easy case. The case that was really interesting to me to pursue, however, had to do with the non-alcohol aspect of the case. A different coverage that the bar had. A negligence claim brought by the trustee. It's a different claim than the dram shop claim. We wanted to demonstrate that the bar had failed in its responsibilities to provide a safe lodging for Melissa and her companion. We thought that we could use past precedent in Minnesota, in which the Supreme Court has defined a houseboat as more like lodging than transportation or boating, giving rise to an innkeeper's duty to a person who's staying there. In other words, Rogers Resort would have the duty to provide safe access to a lodging and a safe lodging.
And that they did not do.
They did not. That was our main point. We thought they should not have given access. They made money every time somebody drove on the ice over their access road. Ice was too thin, too dangerous. Right. Resort people knew it. It open water. We thought they should have marked the path out to the sleeper house. It's about a mile on the lake.
Have they done that since this case?
Well, I don't know. Of course, there's been thaw and then there's been new ice, but the police investigation record showed that there were just some lathe markings about a third to a half of the way out there. But this is unseasonably warm. There's no snow. Right. You can't follow an ice road out there. And we also thought that the lathe marking that they had done out to the open water hole could have confused the driver of the ATV, who was likely Melissa's companion, into driving along those lathe right into open water.
So tell us the end result of the case.
That case ended up being settled as well. We had some cooperative work with the family of Melissa's companion. And then there were some areas where we had different claims than they did because we thought Melissa was a passenger on the ATV. The driver of the ATV would have had some responsibility for driving it in a negligence claim, not the dram shop claim. But we ended up again having a very good result for the family for Melissa, and it involved both the dram shop coverage and the general negligence coverage that the bar had.
Congratulations on that. We have Jake with us today, so we're going to bring him on right now.
Great.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Jake Seidenstricker. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here, by the way.
Thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about what your sister meant to you.
Well, my sister and I, my parents got divorced when we were young, so my sister and I were basically like really close because she took kind of initiative to kind of take me under her wing and kind of be my mother, I guess, somewhat,
keep you out of trouble.
A figure. Yeah, she was a role model, and so I looked up to her a lot growing up.
And take us back to, what is it now, 2 years ago, correct? Almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah. Take us back to, she went up fishing. She liked fishing a lot, didn't she?
Yeah, growing up on a lake, we loved the outdoors, hunting and fishing, and she was just getting more into all of what we grew up doing. She was living in the cities, and then that stressful city life, she wanted to get out and do more ice fishing and hunting and stuff. So I was going out of town to go hunting. She wanted to go up ice fishing, and she asked me to go, and I'm like, I'm gonna go on hunting. So she's like asking around, found a buddy to go up there, go fishing with. She had a stressful week. She wanted to go up and get out of town.
Right. And then when did you discover what had happened?
I was getting home on Sunday evening from hunting, got on my road back to my house, pulled up Facebook, and someone had posted, "Has anyone seen or talked to Melissa S?" That's her name on Facebook. And so I was like, what the heck? And I click on it, open up the comments. Everyone's like, no, we're supposed to meet with them on Saturday, but never did. Their phone's been shut off. And, so there's like 10 comments. And I start commenting back, try calling her, phone goes straight to voicemail. I kick it down, get in my driveway. Her car's in my driveway, and my mom's standing outside. I'm like, is Melissa here? And she's like, no. I'm like, oh, she rode with Zeph. Yeah, why? And I said, there's a post on Facebook asking if anyone's talked to her or seen her, and everyone's saying no, they haven't. So then we all just started panicking, I guess, calling sheriff's offices, hospitals. I hurry up, get my stuff unloaded, and throw wheelers on to go get up there that night.
How far is it from your home to the...
5 to 6 hours.
Whoa. So you were headed out there.
Yeah. So I got on the road around 10 and made it up there around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. 10 or 11, I left my house.
It's such a big lake. How do you know where to look?
Well, you got resorts, and they have the reason I got up there at dark, didn't want to go out. It's just like if you are hunting and you shoot an animal and it's dark out, you don't really want to go looking for an animal in the dark unless you have enough lights and stuff and you really know your area. So you got to wait for daylight. So we waited till daylight, and then we started somewhat searching the shorelines until the sheriff's department had all their guys up there in search and rescue. We regrouped with them, ended up going out to the fish houses that the resort put out on the lake about a mile out. I went out there with 3 investigators that wanted to take pictures and look over everything, and I was like, well, I want to come and see what it looks like, because I could tell you, were they searching for somewhere to go fishing, or what were they doing? I look in there, their rods are still in the water, just at the top of the surface. Their Vexilar fish finders are right there. So the only thing that's missing is the 4-wheeler, them, and the trailer with my portable fish house in it. So they weren't out just looking for somewhere new to fish, because the owner had said something like that. And so they were taking pictures. I wanted to look around, so I had my nice binoculars and seen a couple spots off in the distance, and decided, hey guys, I'm gonna go check this out. Took my couple friends that I was with, and we drove over that way. and seen this big open water hole and a crack. So I got off because I didn't know how safe the ice was and started walking towards these black specks. Well, as I'm walking, I'm kind of paralleling with this open water hole, and like a bucket was blowing across the lake because it was really windy. And I kept looking. I'm like, I better go check out this hole. I see some things kind of over there, even though it could have blown in there. And the closer I got, the more I noticed that there was something sitting on the south end of the open water hole. I'm like, that looks like a boot on the edge of the ice. And I keep looking at my binoculars, and finally I get up close enough, and I'm like, I think that's a boot. Get over there, and sure enough, it's my sister's boot. And then her other one's floating in the water right next to it. There's lip gloss, a pair of sunglasses, her gloves, his boots, gloves, a hat, all floating right there on that edge of the ice.
Why did all these clothes come off?
My sister was a certified diver, and growing up on the lake, she was told that when you go in the water, you want to get your boots off right away. So I'm guessing it was just first instinct, to get your boots off, we can, paddle our way out. And so they took, I think, took a lot of time trying to get their boots off.
Yeah, what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, I called search and rescue right away to tell them that I found where they went through. And then basically, being that I'm a hunter, I started looking at the ice for them, looking towards shore. Where's the closest point? Where would they go? If they did get out, I wanted to try to figure out where they would go. So after search and rescue got out there, then we went straight into shore. We looked at fish houses. We looked everywhere for any kind of signs, clues, anything like that. And search and rescue, they knew that they didn't make it out, basically, and they said, yeah, we don't really want you guys around here just to have to see this. So I wanted to stay as, I don't know what the term would be, but right-minded and thinking that she made it out. So we went to shore to look for foot tracks and look around, and they found some more clothing and stuff, and they ended up getting the dive team up there that later afternoon, and they had like a fish finder that had side scan and down imaging, and they found the four-wheeler and the trailer. And then so my sister and Zeth they found them right underneath where their boots and gloves were, so right at the edge of the ice.
A lot of people might think that this is just a tragic accident. What brought you to Steve?
From growing up on the lakes, big popular lakes, we understand that there's kind of a due diligence of a resort to have to provide a safe...
And you knew this. You knew this. Okay.
And a safe, secure environment for them to go out in, especially if you're going to have rental fish houses.
Right.
Rogers on Red was the only resort on the lake to have rentals out on the lake, providing ice fishing services. The rest of them had their rentals on shore, at shore on the ice for just a sleeper house, someone to camp in. But for all the things that I'd seen, the owner changed his story 3 different times that I noticed. The investigators didn't, so I brought it up to them like, hey, you guys didn't notice that he changed his story the last time you seen him 3 different times. That the due diligence of the resort, a four-wheeler drove into the same open water hole Friday afternoon during daylight, and they put 1 orange safety cone where that four-wheeler went in, on the northeast corner of it. The majority of all the traffic is on the south end of that. Why wouldn't they just block off the whole south end? And so that was one thing. Their road had black lath stakes. The crack that came leading all the way out to that open water hole had black spray painted lath stakes, but closer together. And then right before the open water hole, there was kind of like a more cracked open crack, and they put X's. Yeah. But at night, when it's dark, raining, and blowing wind, black spray painted lath stakes aren't going to stand out. Mm-hmm. But my guess was that they got off the regular road and seen those other black glass stakes and drove out on that until they all of a sudden last second see the open water.
And I think you pointed out, Steve, that to go to these resorts and to drive on these roads, you got to pay, don't you?
Pay to use the access road.
Yeah. So in other words, if you're paying someone, you're paying them not only to guide you to the right place, but also to protect you.
Yes.
And it was very sharp of you to see the liability involved there. It took, 2 years to resolve the case? Is that right?
A little less than that.
Yeah, a little over a year, and about a year and a quarter, I guess.
Do you think as a resolution of this that the resort has changed the way they operate?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Not from what I've seen or heard.
Really? So what a message you want to send out to anybody who wants to go ice fishing in this neck of the woods?
Personally, I would just make sure that the resorts are doing what they need to do for due diligence of keeping people safe. Rogers on Red,
that's a big resort.
Right? They have a big winter business. Yeah. It's a big resort, not a big bar area, but it's a big area that they have. And this last year, they had a lot of trucks and stuff go through again. No tragedies, but they had
break through the ice.
Yeah. Many trucks break through the ice, four-wheelers. Again, with our winter weather, we have cold right away and then it warms back up. And
the climate's changed.
They want to push the envelope and get people out there because they want to make money. And when you get 3,000 people out a day at $10 a pop, that's $30,000 that they're making that day.
Is that what they charge? $10 to use the road, huh?
Yep.
And they have no alerts or a radio channel or anything like that they can announce things on?
They use their Facebook, but they're typically the last one to try to do anything. I mean, like the year that my sister passed away, the ice was so bad that fall, winter, that all the other resorts shut down. Mm. So then Roger said, well, we're going to shut down too. And then they changed it from that to, actually, we're just not going to charge you a fee to get on the lake, but you can come up here. The bar's open. We got beer and food. Use our access, and we'll serve you guys plenty of drinks.
How did you end up finding Steve's law firm, and what's your opinion about the way they settled the case, handled?
Well, Steve and my sister had a really good relationship from years and years ago. He represented her in a car accident case back when she was 16, I believe. So I've known of Steve since I was a little kid, and I knew that he treated her well. He's represented my stepmom and my mom also. And
he's the family lawyer.
Well, when you find someone that treats you right, treats your family right, you go with someone that you can trust. Yeah. And I trusted Steve to do that. So,
what's the message you want to send to all the ice fishermen out there and people who enjoy this type of sport right now? What can they expect from resorts?
Well, I guess don't expect everything. Expect to pay attention to yourself and make sure that you're being safe. But we're trying to do something new, and that's create a nonprofit to keep resorts doing their due diligence, kind of do it's a Safe Ice certified program, and make sure that these resorts are doing like a training program to make sure their lake guys are making sure that their cracks are marked off properly. They have the right markers, making sure that they're either lit up or orange, reflective, everything like that. So my goal is to make sure that all ice fishermen are aware of what can happen. Yeah. It can happen just like that. Your loved ones, they can be gone just that quick. Cold water is not something to play around with, especially at night. So make sure that you're going to a reputable business that hopefully hasn't had to go through something like this before, and make sure that they take it very seriously. Good.
One of the key people in this case was an expert that you brought on, Steve Elegy, right?
Elegy. Yeah.
We're going to have him on in a minute, but I want to thank you very much for being on the show, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Steve Fellogy to the show. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you.
I like your name.
Well, it's a Czech name.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So you were brought into this case by Steve because you are a noted fishing guide and a big water resort fishing manager, correct?
Well, I have a lot of history of being in the resort business, both ice fishing and summer fishing on big water, Big Mille Lacs Lake, and very similar to Upper Red Lake, where this.
So you advise people when they want to go fishing, where they should go fishing, what they should watch for, etc., right?
Sure. And when it comes to the ice fishing, I was the guy that was making the safety decisions on when and where and when not to go on the ice.
So let's talk about this case specifically, okay? What were your opinions in this case as to show where the resort was at fault, other things should have been done to protect the tourists there?
Well, one of the things that I always felt was when a resort opens a private access to access the lake to the public, they're conveying a certain amount of confidence, safety confidence. And in this case, the access shouldn't have been open. There was what I call traps all over that lake. And unfortunately, these people, walked in or drove into a trap. There was open water in a lot of areas on the lake.
Open waters means you have ice, and then you have also water that isn't iced over.
Yeah, the lake wasn't completely frozen, locked up. And when that happens, the big sheet of ice can move, the wind catches it, it can move, and it can vary in where that open water is. It's not a stationary or a given spot of open water, it can move. And therefore, again, coming down to the confidence level, people were given maps where this stuff was at out there, this bad stuff, and yet the maps meant nothing 2 hours later or a day later or whatever, because that wind is shifting that ice around. I just don't think that it's a place where the resort should have positioned people to fail.
Right. Jake mentioned that I think all the other resorts were closed or something other than this resort. Right?
Yeah, and one thing that you always, as a resort operator, and especially ice fishing, you have to assume that there's going to be some alcohol involved and some judgment issues, and then you also can't assume that the people going out on the ice as consumers or just the general public, they don't have that ice common sense that a resort operator would have. And in this case, it was a perfect storm setup. I mean, there was no snow, so there was no plowed road banks to follow. They didn't have the roads marked well. They sent these people out into a situation that was almost impossible for anybody to deal with, because the ice with no snow and open water is about the same color.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, Steve. We produce some railroad shows, and at crossings when people are killed, and there are some big name companies like BNSF, Union Pacific, that have gone out to these accidents, are alerted right away. And if the vegetation was too high, so someone couldn't see a train coming, for example, they will have their crew cut down the trees, take photographs, and say, hey, this is the way it was when the accident happened, which is a total lie, okay? In cases like this, when he's describing, for example, that there wasn't enough notification, how do you get the photographs? How do you prove your case? How do you prove that they did not do what they were supposed to do? And the only way I could imagine is by photographs. Is that right?
Well, yes, that's a very helpful way. In this case, we were very fortunate that law enforcement got involved with a thorough investigation early on. They did not take photographs of the lathe that would have marked part of the way out to the string of sleeper houses that were about a mile on the lake. But we had it in the reports, the deputy saying they only went about a third of the way out to the sleeper houses. Interesting thing, talking about roads. An ice road is not a public road. It is not a private road. It is just a pathway that is used out on water, on ice that covers water to get to where you're going. You're not required to drive in a certain area to get out to a fish house, that added a level of complexity to our case to try to define the duty of the resort. The way we handled that was to use the analysis of lodging, that an innkeeper, Rogers Resort in this case, providing lodging, has a duty to provide safe access to lodging to their guests.
So let me ask you this question. A resort is up in the mountains, not this case. There's a road leading up to it. Okay, when does the responsibility click in to the resort owner for dangerous, icy roads to get up to his resort?
Well, if they're open for business, they have some responsibility if it's a private road. If it's a public road, there may be some shared responsibility. You're asking a question that has lots of variables on it. Generally, if it's a public road, the state would have responsibility or the county would have responsibility for maintaining the road. There are some exceptions to that if the owner of the property affirmatively causes a dangerous condition to exist on the road.
Steve, it would seem to me that you probably have rarely testified in cases, right? Or have been involved with legal cases, have you?
No, this was the first and only time I've ever been involved in this, and I hesitated, to get involved in it, but I also felt a responsibility to convey reality here, to show the public, that this was a negligent situation, and teach some of these resort people even that they need to rethink some of this stuff. Money isn't everything in a case like these.
You mentioned earlier before the show, as I learn more about, you have to take your own personal responsibility besides depending on what others are supposed to help you to protect you to be safe. I asked you the question of how do you know that the ice is safe to drive on? And you mentioned to me that experienced people will drill down in the ice, correct?
Sure.
And if the ice is not 12 inches deep, but 13 is your minimum, right?
Well, 12 seems to be the benchmark in a lot of people's minds. I always erred on the side of caution.
Yeah.
That's one of my pet sayings. I always err on the side of caution when you're in the ice fishing business. And I always lied to the people. When I had 12, I'd say 11. When I had 13, I'd say 12. I always waited till I had 13.
But where do you do that measurement? At the edge of the lake? Or?
No, we actually will start at shore where the access and where the people are going to drive. We'll take and check the entire area where there's possibly going to be travel. The entire area. Many square miles of ice we'll check to make sure that it's consistent, because there are times where ice, it'll be different ages. As the lake freezes, some of the ice will be several days older than some of the ice, and so it'll be thicker. Yeah. And you have to determine that the whole area is safe, not just part of it. In this case, for example, there was plenty of ice for ATVs to be driving on, but the whole area wasn't safe. And so you had the potential of allowing people, because there are no fence lines out there, there's no laws to say where they could go, and you had the potential of allowing people into a place where they shouldn't have been.
Well, I'm glad you came forward and added tremendous value to the case, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show. And by the way, how can folks get a hold of you?
Well, I've got a Facebook page, that's probably the easiest.
And it's Fellegy, right? Steve,
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll be sure to check it out. And thank you again for being on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And lastly, when people contact you for maybe representing them in a case, how do you determine, what cases you're going to handle?
Well, that's always a great question to explore. I start from the proposition that when somebody comes to see me, they have a good reason to do it. People don't really want to have to talk to a lawyer. People really don't want to have to go talk to a personal injury lawyer, because that means something really bad has happened to them. So I take it right from the beginning that everybody's case requires that I listen to what they have to say and then make an evaluation. Two things, really. What are their damages, and how strong is the liability in the case? If I have a case where I may have strong liability, but damages are certainly, they're there, but not great enough to justify the potentially hundreds of hours that I may have to spend on the case, then I will turn that case down, even if the liability is good, and give them some other advice on how they may proceed. On the other hand, if you have a case where damages are extreme, as we'll have in the case today, I may be confronted with more questions at the outset than I have answers, but I may take the case on to investigate it. And my deal with all of my clients is that if I investigate a case and it turns out that there's nothing for me to pursue from a legal basis, they don't owe me anything for my time. They don't owe me anything for my costs. It's just a cost of doing business for me. Hope that helps with your question.
It does. And I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.